Hey, welcome guys back to the channel. Maverick here with episode 3 of Nekomonogatari Black. So, this series did not waste any time going into the main point of this particular series, which is Hanekawa and her encounter, or her manifestation, if you want to call it, of the, what's it called again? The Sawari Neko, right? So, last episode, Araragi was attacked, nearly died, or got as close to death as he could possibly, being a semi-half vampire thingy of a majig, and all that. But yeah, and apparently Oshino is going to try and take care of this situation by himself, although, as we all know, Araragi is probably not just going to stand by and be a bystander. So, let's see how he gets on board and helps solve the problem. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Tsubasa. Cat. Ooh. So every night she transforms or something like that? Kinda wonder. Nekomonogatari Kuro. Can she actually? You know, the first, ever since I first saw this opening song, I've been meaning to ask: can Hanekawa play the guitar? I wouldn't put it beside her, but I'm just kind of curious why they actually use this as within the opening animation, right? Because typically for all the other opening animations, they show the characters with some of their motifs. Like, I mean, clearly here we see the cat, so that's one thing. Guitar? Why? Eh. Maybe we'll never find out. Did you just break into someone else's house? What the hell? What? Why? What the hell's going on? What? What? How does that even work for one thing? And second thing, like, why is Araragi freaking out over this? Huh? Wait, what was she offering? A kiss or her breast? Well, not too far from the truth. Oh yeah, they are the Fire Sisters after all. Oh, he's involved. He's very, very involved. Okay, so this is Araragi way of making sure these two are safe. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. And geez, they really love their big bro, don't they? I mean, any normal person would have asked about that. There's two. Hmm. Hmm. Ah. Then Jagahara. Ah, he still doesn't know her at that point. Oop. What happened to you? Wow. Is the Sawari Neko that strong? Really? This dude who was... Okay, so he can concentrate. Yeah, this... So what's with you? No, but seriously, this is a dude that wasn't even that afraid of sorry, of Heart Underblade. Why? Okay, so the cat it's okay. So it is Hanekawa's fault. Hanekawa? Why does she know all that? Who is Hanekawa? Like, what is her story? Mm-hmm. Normally in these kinds of folk tales, the cat actually comes back and rewards the guy who took pity. There never was a cat haunting this man in the... Huh. Does this kind of tie back to Nisei Monogatari? With the naturally good and naturally bad talk? She was the cat itself. Mm. They're still sleeping. Oh. The familiar stairs. Okay, okay, whatever. Oh my god. And how did... え
人間、お前がご主人の机を舐め回していたこと以上の事件がこの世にあるのかにゃ。何のことだかさっぱりわからないな。僕はお前が何を裁判じゃ何も認めないぞ。
That laugh of hers.
どうせ僕じゃお前をどうこうはできないからな。猫、それに命まで取られるわけじゃないんだろう。さて、どうかにゃ。俺のエナジードレインはスキルじゃなくてキャラ設定だからにゃ。
Character set.
コントロールできるわけじゃにゃい。手加減はできても加減は効かにゃい。殺すつもりがにゃくってもうっかり殺してしまうということもありうるにゃ。それでも出会い頭に噛みつかれたり引っかかれたりしないだけマシってもんだ。そんなことをされちゃひとたまりもないからな。ふん、吸血鬼か。ま、俺にゃんかじゃ本来太刀打ちもできない上等にか。
Does this cat have to always be so provocative? Why does Hanekawa have all this knowledge, though? Yeah.
エナジードレインを特性に持つ者同士とは言っても、触り猫と吸血鬼じゃ全然違うんだろうけどな。吸血鬼のエナジードレインは食事であって、触り猫のエナジードレインは呪い。ふん、まあそうにゃ。ただわかんねえのは、お前が無差別に人を襲ってるってところなんだよ。タイプって話をするなら、触り猫ってのはそもそも人を襲うタイプの怪異じゃないんだろう。
Oh.
お前にゃーにただのうさばらしにゃよ。あ、人を襲ってる理由、ただのうさばらし。ピンポンダッシュとか壁に落書きとか、そういうのとおにゃじストレスの発散にゃ。ストレスの発散だって、それちょっとどういう意味だ。どういう意味もこういう意味もそのまんまの意味だにゃ。お前さ、あのうちのニャカ見たんだろ。あのうちってご主人のうちだにゃ。わかってんだよ。猫ってのはそこそこはにゃも効くんだにゃ。着替えに帰ってみりゃよ、家んにゃか中がお前の匂いで満ちてたぜ。あんにゃうちであんにゃ家庭で15年間ご主人は過ごしたんにゃ。それがどれほどの圧力とにゃってご主人を責め立てていたか想像がつくだろう。俺はそれをその辺の善良にある市民にいたずらを働くことで発散しているんにゃ。それだけのことにゃよ。これは触りとか呪いとかそういうのを度外視してのおこにゃいにゃ。
So basically, just like a cat, right? Give no shits to anything.
同意系の怪異としてご主人の体を乗っ取っている。つまり脳髄を乗っ取っている。だからご主人がどんにゃ風にあの家庭で15年間過ごしてきたか知っている。だからご主人のストレスの発散に協力してやってるってわけにゃ。だが、それが理由なら無関係の人を襲うなんてことしなくっても。あいにく俺はこのやり方しか知らねえんでにゃ。
Well, yeah, you gotta admit, Hanekawa's situation is really messed up. I'm still not quite sure if that was reason enough for Araki's overreaction, though.
丸みを帯びていると思わにゃいかい。お前の腕を引きちぎった時と比べればよ。それは思ってたよ。だろ。つまり俺のやってることは効果的ってことにゃ。そういうことだから安心しろ。あと500人も襲えばご主人のストレス発散は終わる。そうすりゃ俺という怪異は役目を終え、恩返しを終えて消滅するんだにゃ。だから余計に邪魔をすんにゃってあのアロハのおっさんに伝えておけよ。よくわからんけどあのアロハ野郎ご主人を助けたいんだろう。だったらそれは俺に任せておけ。どうしてお前がそこまでするんだよ。お前なんて所詮は羽川に取り付いた悪霊でしかねえだろ。羽川のために何かを能動的にする理由なんか
Good point, Araragi.
から何度も言ってるだろ。らしくもにゃい恩返しのため。というのはしかし嘘にゃ。そもそも俺は実のところ知識を。
Now, why would you have any reason to return the favor?
ご主人に恩を感じる理由がにゃいんにゃ。
何を言っているんだ。路上で車にひかれて死んだ。
Oh, because Hanekawa's knowledge is in her, so it also imprinted some
上司にや優しさに
morals on her?
じゃなかったのか。
違うんだにゃそれが。確かに現象としてはそれと同じことが起きた。ご主人は道路に横たわる俺を拾い上げ、見晴らしのいい場所まで移動し、俺を埋めた。その認識自体に間違いはにゃい。ご主人はあの時、俺に全く同情してにゃんがいにゃかった。ご主人は路上で死んでる俺をまるで決まりきったルーチンワークのように供養したんにゃ。全くの無感情にゃ。俺のことをまるで
No emotion whatsoever.
俺のつけ込む好きにゃんて本当はにゃかったんにゃ。
Really?
でも羽川は
普通の女の子であろうというのがご主人の唯一の願いにゃ。道端で死んでいる猫を見かけたら埋めてあげる。まあこれは確かに正しいことにゃ。
Oh, so is she like a robot in a way?
だからその法則と方程式にご主人は従った。それだけのことにゃ。
Huh, this is interesting.
そんな法則とか方程式は遵守できるはずがないんだ。それが正しくも美しい行為だと分かっていても、大抵のやつはのたれ死んでいる猫を埋めてやろうとは思わない。いや、思うかもしれない。だけど実行はしない。心情的にも能力的にもできるはずがない。なのに羽川はそれをやってのける。
そうやってのける。無感情ににゃ。にゃにも思わにゃいまま機械のように倫理を全うできる。数々の供養をされてきた俺にもそれは物珍しくってにゃ。
Going through the motions.
助けてやりたくにゃったのさ。
Huh. This is such an interesting concept, actually.
要するに気まぐれだよ。猫っぽいだろ。じゃ、ちゃんと伝えといてくれよ。あのアロハ野郎には猫のいたずらくらい見逃せっつっとけ。動物虐待で訴えられたくにゃきゃよ。こっちは見逃してやってんだから。
どういう意味だよ。
わかんだろ。俺がつうかご主人が本気で害をにゃすつもりににゃってるや。あんにゃ野郎は最初の1回目で殺せてるってことだ。知り合いだから手抜いて戦ってやってるってことだよ。お前はまあ別に何もするつもりもねえみたいだが。
Hmm.
ま、お前が正解だよ。ご主人のためを思うなら何もしないのが正解だ。取り立てて死にたいってわけじゃねえんだろ。あばよ、お前はにゃんかこう頑張って幸せに暮らせや。人間。
待て。
ああ、
羽川のストレス発散がお前の目的だと言うなら、そんなのは無理だぞ。
ああ、にゃんでだよ。
だってそのストレスの大元は羽川の両親にあるんだろう。たとえストレスが全部発散されたところで、そんなものは家に帰ればまた蓄積されるだけだ。
Thanks for reminding me I'll just have to kill them?
1ヶ月間ストレス発散し続けようと、いつかは元の木阿弥だ。
ふん。ああ、そりゃそうだ。だったら二度と帰ってくる気に
Yeah. Why would you mention that?
痛めつけてやるだけにゃ。今度はエニャジードレインじゃ済ませにゃい。家庭にゃい暴力には家庭にゃい暴力で答えてやるだけにゃ。それがご主人の望みにあら。
そんなことを。
そう、それで正解にゃ。触った瞬間触りがある。だから触り猫。夜にゃ。指を触れるにゃ。関わりを持たにゃいのが正解にゃ。俺に対しても。そして多分、ご主人に対してもにゃ。
猫、お前は。
あばよ、お前は幸せに暮
Hmm.
らせ。
That was Hanekawa just in, right? That was Hanekawa's feelings? In a way? Huh. Okay. This entire arc with Hanekawa's character is a lot more interesting than I was expecting. See, back in Bake, I had this kind of feeling that Hanekawa was like the final boss of everything.
ダメだ。僕はやっぱり羽川のことが好きだ。好きすぎてとてもじゃねえけど触れねえ。あいつが好きだ。好きかなって
So what's the difference? But no, seriously, this is a really interesting episode. I'll see you guys after this. Alright, this was definitely a very interesting episode in terms of the character development, and I love that we're finally getting more and more information and backstory on Hanekawa. To me, she has always been the biggest mystery out of the entire series, even back in Bake when I first encountered this series, right? Indeed, at that point, I was thinking, okay, this Hanekawa girl is definitely going to be the last thing that we have to solve before the end of the series. Now, at that point, I was only talking about Bake, but the more that this series goes on, the more I'm thinking perhaps her thing is really central to the entirety of the Monogatari series as well. Which we'll talk about a little bit later. But first of all, I want to bring it back to Oshino, and particularly in case of Oshino's statement on human nature, right? I do love that it calls back immediately back to Nisei Monogatari, where we've had these three friends, right? We got Oshino and Kaiki and Kagenui, who represent different aspects and have different philosophies on life and human nature. Kagenue is, I think she basically falls on the human nature is good side, Kaki falls on human nature is bad side, and then we got Oshino, who is sort of like the in-betweener, right? And they each represent, different sides of the spectrum, with Oshino being straight in the middle here. So I do like that they immediately call back to that, they each have their own philosophy on life. There's no particular right and wrong. From a personal perspective, I would stand by Oshino's viewpoint a bit more. That's probably why I also like his character so much. Yeah, it's just a thing I was really surprised and pleased by, let's say, that they are calling back to this. Which, considering that we've already seen Nisei, it makes this just that much more enticing. And I was definitely surprised by the fact that he couldn't take on Sawari Neko. Like I said, I had the feeling that he is super strong. I mean, back in Kizu, was it, right? He certainly didn't show any qualms at all about even facing Heart Underblade, right? And definitely for all the other vampire hunters there, he basically took on their attack with no problem at all, right? And that scene is still one of my top scenes within the Monogatari series so far. Like, that was such a cool scene. But here we can see him clearly having a lot of trouble against Sari Neko, and mostly due to the Sari Neko's involvement with Hanekawa, right? So Hanekawa herself definitely is if not quite an apparition or oddity, let's just say that she's quite the unusual person herself, right? And so let's just talk about Hanekawa here, because, again, there are a lot of things that are interesting here. So, first of all, I just want to point out that in a sense, you could say that Hanekawa was the start of this entire story. If we think back to Kizu, it was only after Araragi got involved with Hanekawa that all the other things started to happen. Like, his life literally changed that day, on that day. You can argue that, yeah, he's Karen and Tsukihi. Tsukihi is also an oddity. He's always had an oddity next to him, so on and so forth. But everything really started changing and started moving forward when he encountered Hanekawa, and then, the rest is history, right? So in a sense, you could say the entire story started with Hanekawa. And I just get the feeling that perhaps it's going to end with Hanekawa as well. And like I said, Hanekawa's character is just so interesting and mysterious. Even in this episode, I think it raises even more questions, like, how does she have that much knowledge, right? Like, what exactly is she? How can someone with just pure stress and knowledge even counter just these two parts combined with a low-level apparition, be able to overcome one of the best pros in the business, right? So that is definitely something to take note of. I'm definitely really curious, like, what her backstory is. And the entire part about her not having any emotion at all, almost like a machine in a sense. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to take that literally, on whether or not Sari Neko is actually saying the truth or lying, but if that was the case and Sari Neko was telling the truth, that is such an interesting character, right? That changes that would completely flip the perception we have of Hanekawa up to now. And indeed, what about Araragi's perception of Hanekawa? Why he reveres her so much? We need to put a question mark next to that, right? Is she going through is she really all that caring and good natured and all that, or is that just sort of like like a robot that's programmed to feel that way, or not even feel that way, but just to do and act in a certain way without any emotions at all, right? So for the time being, I'm going to assume that is the case, right? I'm going to assume that what Sari Neko is saying is actually the truth. Now that puts a lot of that raises a lot of different questions and makes us view the situations that happened in a new light, right? And particularly like why exactly Araragi is so attracted to Hanekawa in a way. You can say that if, like I said, I'm assuming that what Saranako is saying is the truth here, right? So if that was true, then you could almost say that Araragi and Hanekawa are exact opposites of each other, right? Araragi is kind to a fault, right? And to be honest, the emotions that he's feeling, like these kinds of things, even overcome all of his reason and logic, right? I mentioned numerous times before that I can't really figure out Araragi's character because his actions don't really have a logic behind them. It's literally, okay, how can I be the most kind possible, basically? And kind. I mean, sure, he has his mischief and his sort of pranking and fooling around and stuff. But when push comes to shove, he's showing that literally he's willing to die even for someone who he never knew, right? As we've seen in Kizu back in for Heart Underblade. And yet Hanekawa is pretty much the exact opposite here. Even though she is exhibiting the same sort of behavior, it's coming from, you could even say, a logic perspective, right? And the logic here is not that it's not in the sense that it has to make sense, right? I'm talking about logic more like in terms of computer programs, because you are programmed to act in a certain way within a certain situation. That is how you do it. It's devoid of any kind of emotion, any kind of other considerations. It's just if A, then B, that kind of thing. So in a sense, you could say that these two, even though the end result is the same, the structure and the way that they arrived at the same sort of action is totally different on complete opposite sides of the spectrum. So that to me could be a possible reason why Araragi is so attracted to Hanekawa in a sense. And perhaps in a way also why Hanekawa is attracted to Araragi, right? So that is definitely something to take note of. Now, then again, if the Sari Neko, what she's saying is a complete lie, then forget this all happened, right? This is just a viewed as more of a sort of what if discussion, if you will. And also, because of this sort of unique aspect of Hanekawa, let's also talk about, for instance, the past 15 years, that she's lived through within the, what's her name again? Tsubasa, within the Tsubasa household, right? So, again, going back to sort of the beginning of the episode when Araragi was going to her house and looking around, like, I still feel like he kind of overreacts there. Like, I don't know, like, what was wrong with him. But you gotta admit, that's a pretty messed up situation, right? Living in the same house for 15 years and not even having a room of her own, completely, and it's not even the case where, I mean, what more can I say, right? It's just messed up. That's it. It's just totally messed up. If this was any normal person, we would be saying, you're right, we gotta call the child abuse hotline or something like that, and really sort of rescue her. And in fact, I really don't know why she is so adamant about still staying in that home, right? Like, what is the connection that she still has with that? Like, why put up with this in the first place? Which might also be sort of explained by her very unique sort of character, let's just say. In fact, so for one thing, maybe in her mind, if her main goal is to be an ordinary person, right? I'm just thinking how a for instance, how a machine, how a robot would look at this situation. So perhaps ordinary person also equals having a household and having parents, having a home to live with, having parents living with you, this kind of thing, right? So she's attempting to maintain this semblance of normality, even though, at its core, it's already a very abnormal situation, right? But just to maintain appearances here. So that could be a possibility as to why she is still willing to put up with this and building up her own stress more and more and more, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is then, we gotta also ask ourselves, what is the cause and what is the, what is the correlation between these two? Is it because of her household that is this way that caused Hanekawa to turn into this kind of person that she is, devoid of emotion and, only acting in basically in a rule-based way? Or is it vice versa? Is it because that she, since she was born, was kind of a unique sort of character and individual in the first place, which caused her family to sort of ostracize her, right? I think it should be the former. If we think back to what Hanekawa was saying before, it seems that the entire situation within the family was it's a kind of unique situation already in the first place, right? With remarriages and all that, and that was what caused this situation to come to be. So perhaps it's a case where these family matters came first, and that caused Hanekawa to turn into this kind of person, and so on and so forth, right? So that could be a reasoning here. And indeed, with this whole thinking about her having no emotion at all, I'm just thinking that doesn't really make sense either, because if you have no emotions, why would you feel stress, right? That doesn't make sense. If you have no emotions, you wouldn't feel sad, you wouldn't feel angry, you wouldn't feel anything. How would you have stress if you were simply a machine? So I don't know. I feel like there are still some holes in this entire concept that I'm talking about, which hopefully will be filled a little bit later. But the best logical conclusion I can come to right now is the family situation happened first. Hanekawa turned into the person that she is now, and is attempting to sort of suppress her own emotions in a way, right? So kill all her emotions and just act according to a set of rules that she has long since defined by herself, right? And that is the way that she contains her stress, she contains her feelings and emotions, and that's why the stress keeps on building on and on and on, right? So that's my theory as to Hanekawa's character as of right now. And beyond that, the stress relief and all that, yeah, I guess that all kind of makes sense in a way. Doing things that you aren't supposed to do and whatnot, that is indeed the most stress relieving thing, right? Not keeping up the goody two shoes act anymore, and just going wild with your darkest desires or whatever, right? I'm not gonna go over too much on that, because I feel like the main focal point here is definitely still Hanekawa's character, and that is the most important thing. But yeah, anyways, that was a lot of assumptions as well, but as you guys know, since you've been watching this series so far, that's what I like to do with this series overall. Again, if I'm completely wrong, that's okay, and if it's explained later, then you guys don't have to spoil me as well. But yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting episode, and if this is indeed Hanekawa's character and the reasoning for her, I gotta say, that's a pretty damn interesting character, and a pretty well-written, complex character, let's say. So, anyways, that is it for Nekomonogatari Black episode 3. Next episode will be the end of this particular series, and then we'll see from there, right? So, stay tuned for next week, and bye-bye.